great thing about having powerful women in village management is that I never have to stand up and speak into a mic. Have the right height. I love that. So my name is Dri Planning, I'm the mayor of the village of Boston, and thank you all for being here on this absolutely beautiful spring day in one of my favorite locations in the village, which is our community center, probably one of the most used facilities, anything in the village, which is why it is part of the consideration for DRI projects. That is my way of welcoming you to our beautiful village of 27 plus residents, a couple of hundred small businesses, and a couple of hundred nonprofits all registered in our village. We hope that today you get to learn about a number of the projects that are on the board for consideration into the DRI process, which some of you have been involved in, and for some of you it's the first time. I'd like you to think about three things. Number one, this is also being videotaped. For those of you that like to have conversations on the side and all that, it's all being videotaped, so just be aware of that. Number one is to really walk around and learn about the projects as much as you can. Number two, we want to get your input. You, your friends, your families, your colleagues at work, your neighbors, everybody that is involved in Austining when you leave here today, because both from today and after you leave, the most important thing is for us to learn what the community thinks about the project. Singularly, there might be a project that really speaks to you. There might be people involved in the project that are trying to sell you on the project because that's their agenda. That's okay. Everybody's allowed to have their agenda. We like that. But we do want you to think about individual projects that speak to you and how they fit overall. My goal as mayor and for the board is to really think about projects over the next 20 years. So what might sound like a great idea today for an organization or some people in the community may not speak as well for 20 years from now. So I really do ask that you think about individual projects and how they fit into the long term and how they fit into the entire community. Is it suitable for a handful of people in the community? Is it for 27,000? Is it for seniors, for teens? However, the environment, however you look at it. All of this is really important. This is not the time to think about new and exciting ideas that you've had all these years of living here. This is actually to refine and think about the projects that you're looking at today and how they fit into a larger picture, to be really honest with you, because this entire process in place. I won't get off the microphone without a few thank yous. Number one, to the village staff, who spends lots and lots of time making sure that things are done, that they're done well, and that all the communications go out to the community. Our partners at the state, all the consultants, the teams, the project managers, who really take a lot of care and thoughtfulness in how they present things and make sure that we also follow a process that the other DRI candidates are following as well. There are other groups, including our neighbors at Aberystwyth. We have trustee Dana White here, who is very, very intimately involved in DRI. Raise your hand again, for those of you, I'm sure everybody knows you, but for those that don't. Any questions? You can also ask Dana, you can ask me, we'll be here, and the village manager is somewhere. There she is, hi Karen. So there are a lot of people for you to ask. We're wearing name tags, and please do so. And enjoy the rest of the day, ask questions, etc. I'm going to turn it over.
All right, hi, I'm Catherine Snell. I'm a project manager with the Dri company who's been brought on board by the state to assist the village of Austining with implementing the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. Thank you so much for joining us here on this lovely afternoon. We're going to walk through a brief presentation, and then the real focus of this meeting is to hear your feedback on the different projects that are proposed for DRI funding and about which there's information around the room. So let's go to the presentation. Okay, so the presentation started with a welcome. Thank you again to the mayor. I'll be speaking about three different agenda items today. First, I'll be speaking about the DRI planning process, sort of generally speaking, for every community that's awarded DRI funding. Then we'll speak about the vision and goals for the Village of Ossining, DRI. And then we'll speak briefly about the proposed projects before you can walk the room and learn about them some more and offer feedback. I should flag that for anyone who's in need of Spanish translation services, we have Cecilia and Beatrice in the back who can walk around the room with folks once we begin the open house portion of the meeting. Okay. So, much better. The first part of this presentation is about the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. As you can see, each year the state's regional economic development councils award DRI grants. In December of 2021, the Village of Ossining was awarded $10 million. The Village of Abstract, across the river, was the other recipient of a DRI grant this year. And this grant is used toward improvement projects throughout the village. So how does the DRI planning process work? Well, it begins with a local planning committee that consists of local and regional leaders. This group is meeting regularly to represent the community's priorities. And you'll see here they have a number of other responsibilities, including guiding the project team, weighing in on the vision and goals, reviewing planning documents, and ultimately recommending the slate of projects that will go to the state for funding consideration. In addition to the local planning committee, the DRI process consists of community meetings. That's where we ask for your direct feedback throughout the process. We are also supported by the village staff, who have done a lot of work to help prepare materials for today's meeting, along with the consultant team and staff from different state agencies. You can see here a timeline of the planning process. It takes place over 6 months. We've already had one community meeting. You may recall that took place online. That's where we discussed the vision and goals for downtown Ossining. This is the second community planning meeting where you will learn about proposed projects. And then we'll have a third meeting in June where we'll have a draft of the strategic investment plan and a slate of projects that the LPC has preliminarily recommended for funding. We'll see here today. Okay, so now thinking about the DRI boundary, vision, and goals for this community. You can see here a map of the DRI boundary. There's also a printed version of this right at the door. The DRI boundary communicates where the community wants to focus their downtown revitalization efforts. In this case, to the north, it's bounded by the Sing Sing Hill Greenway. To the south, by the Sing Sing Prison Museum. To the west, by the Hudson River and the ferry dock. And to the east, by Highland Avenue. Another thing that I wanted to observe about this boundary is that it includes both the Main Street corridor as well as the public waterfront. And you'll see that connecting these two components of downtown is a real focus of the effort in this community. Okay, so here is the vision for downtown Ossining. This is also printed on a board near the entrance, so I won't have to read it to you. But the vision for downtown revitalization speaks to the abundant resources that are already at your disposal in the Village of Ossining today, and how to build on those existing resources to foster economic development that's inclusive and sustainable for the future. The projects that are recommended for DRI funding should support this DRI vision. Okay, in addition to the vision, there are 4 goals for the DRI in the Village of Ossining. The goals are established to help achieve the vision, and we would like them to be detailed, attainable, and action-oriented. As you can see, we've got 4 of them, and I do think it's worth talking about these in a little bit of detail, so as you review So the first is around transportation and mobility. So as I said earlier, a primary goal is improving walkability and connecting downtown Ossining, which has a steep hill. That work could be done by implementing improvements that increase safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, that also promote transit ridership, and that address concerns around parking availability. The second goal is around economic development. In this case, we are interested in strengthening the local economy by leveraging existing assets to encourage development that's inclusive, that's sustainable and resilient, so that the village continues to reflect its rich economic and cultural diversity. The third goal is around housing. In this case, we would like to encourage the creation of mixed-use housing in downtown Ossining through public-private partnerships that result in the rehabilitation of existing buildings and the creation of new mixed-use transit-oriented developments. Lastly, goal 4 is about open space, recreation, arts and culture. And in this case, we're talking about, again, building on and improving existing assets, including this beautiful community center, and encouraging a vibrant sense of place through outdoor dining, public art, and ongoing cultural programming. Okay, so now looking to the proposed projects, which are the real star of the show today. Projects recommended for DRI funding should catalyze or continue investment in the downtown. The Village of Ossining, in their application for DRI funding, identified an initial slate of projects. If you had attended the first community meeting through the virtual meeting room, you may have seen some information about that initial slate of projects. Then in March, we issued a call for projects, and we got a couple of new ideas that were not a part of that initial application, and some from the initial application fell out because they'd already been awarded other funding. We also applied some eligibility criteria to what came in through the call for projects, and we are left with 15 proposed projects for DRI funding, and those are the ones you'll see on poster boards today. So, as I mentioned, there are some project eligibility criteria. So every project must have a sponsor. It must cost at least $100,000. And it must meet the eligibility requirements that you see on the slide. For example, it should be a public improvement, rehabilitating an existing building or constructing a new building, could be a revolving loan fund, or it could be a branding and art project. It's important to flag that project sponsors need to have the legal authority and capacity to implement a project of at least $100,000. So we're talking about large grants from the state to public, nonprofit, and private partners within the village. Okay, so in June, the local planning committee, who I had referenced earlier, will be asked to select a slate of projects that will be recommended to the state for funding. The LPC will use criteria to identify the projects that ought to receive funding, and they're shown here. The first is that the project should be transformational or catalytic. The project should also have economic benefits and community benefits, and it should be a project that's feasible, that will be implemented and maintained over the long term. So for today, we would like your feedback. This will help inform the LPC's decision. And we're going to ask you 3 questions at every station. The first is, do you think this project has the potential to be transformative or catalytic? What do we mean by that? By transformative, we mean, will it significantly enhance downtown Ossining? By catalytic, we mean, will it have a long-term impact? Will it trigger new investment perhaps? Could it have benefits beyond the DRI project? So we'll ask you, do you think this project has the potential to be transformative or catalytic? We're also going to ask you, what do you like about this project? And what would you improve? So perhaps you'd like to add to a project. Perhaps you'd like to change it a bit. We're very interested in that feedback. For two of the projects, we're also asking some additional questions, so I wanted to bring that to your attention. The first is for the project on public improvements as part of a mixed-use development at the Main Street lots, also known as Market Square, where the farmers market happens. So that's a village-owned property. There's a project proposal associated with it, and we have some specific questions about that one because it's a particularly important site. We also have additional questions about a project for street sweeping in and around the Station Plaza neighborhood. Again, that's another village project in an important area, so we have some additional questions. Please look out for those. These are the boards that you'll see. There's a project title, an image, some information that I'll briefly review. You have the location of the project sponsor type, the project sponsor's name. You'll see the amount of funding that's being requested, as well as the total cost of the project. And then there'll be some information about each project in bullet points. In every case, we have a representative from the project sponsor present. So if you have questions, please direct them to the sponsor. And for your feedback, please use the Post-it notes that were provided to you when you walked in and that are on the table. Thank you very much. I should add that if you have ideas after you leave here today, if something occurs to you once you get home, or if you know folks who would have liked to join but couldn't make it, all of this information will be made available online starting Monday in a virtual meeting room. You'll be able to do the same thing you can here today, read each project board and give feedback. And that'll be open for a week. So we'll be sending that out to everyone who signed up today. And you'll also see it on the Village social media channels and in emails, including the message from the mayor. Okay, with that, I will conclude the presentation. Thank you again.